The first night the stars changed, Captain Darius Cole was already awake. He had learned long ago that sleep was a luxury soldiers could not afford, and tonight the silence carried a weight that set every nerve on edge. His boots were planted on the cracked rooftop of a battered communications tower, binoculars pressed to his scarred face. He watched the heavens open. Dozens of lights tore across the sky in perfect formation, too deliberate for meteors, too fast for human craft. Their hulls gleamed like obsidian mirrors, swallowing moonlight as they cut through the atmosphere. The sound came moments later, an endless roll of thunder, vibrating through the bones of the city below. Civilians stumbled from their homes, pointing upward in awe, still too innocent to recognize the prelude to conquest. Cole lowered the binoculars, his jaw tightening. He had fought in wars where men slaughtered each other for land, for flags, for pride. He knew that look of inevitability, of overwhelming force. These weren't ambassadors. They were predators. And Earth was prey. At ground level, Lieutenant Mason Hale ran between rusted vehicles with a satchel slung over his shoulder, sweat glistening on his brow despite the cold night air. Young, wiry, and dangerously clever, Hale had been drafted into military intelligence less than 2 years prior. He didn't have Cole's calm fatalism. He had ambition, reckless, sparking ambition, and tonight it burned hotter than ever. His transmitter crackled as he reached the tower stairwell. "Captain, do you see them?" Hale's voice was a tremor of excitement wrapped in fear. Cole grunted, still staring at the sky. "Whole damn sky's on fire. Doesn't take a genius to guess their intentions." "They'll underestimate us," Hale said quickly, as though bargaining with fate. "They always do. Everyone thinks humans break easy, but we don't." Cole finally looked at him, eyes narrowing in the dark. "They're not everyone. Those ships didn't crawl across the stars for charity." Above them, the alien fleet spread like a steel canopy, blotting out constellations that had guided sailors for centuries. The first strike came without warning. A blinding lance of green fire erupted from orbit, carving a city block into molten glass. The ground convulsed, windows shattered, and screams rose like smoke. On the Dominion flagship, Admiral Crothos observed with dispassionate satisfaction. His crest of bone spines caught the glow of tactical holograms as he leaned forward in his command throne. He had seen countless conquests, but none so primitive as this one. Earth was a backwater world, its species feral and divided. This would not be a war, it would be a demonstration. "Proceed with controlled bombardments," Crothos ordered in his guttural tongue. "Remind them resistance is pointless. Then we begin collection." To him, this was routine. Another tally on the Dominion's ledger of dominance. What he could not see, what he would not understand until too late, was the way fire forged steel in the human spirit. Back in the chaos, Cole steadied himself as dust rained from the calm tower. His instincts screamed to retreat, but he knew the people below would need leadership before panic devoured them. He turned to Hale, who was frantically setting up the transmitter. "Get me a frequency they can't jam," Cole barked. "I don't care if you have to cannibalize half the tower to do it." Hale's hands moved with manic energy, wires sparking, circuits gutted and reassembled with savage efficiency. He had a gift for tearing order out of chaos, and tonight he worked like a man possessed. Minutes later, his headset buzzed alive. Static resolved into broken voices, resistance chatter already spreading through the fractured military networks. They weren't coordinated, but they weren't silent either. Across the city, men were dragging rifles from closets, old veterans were rallying neighbors, and scattered units were regrouping. Humanity did not lay down and die. It clenched its fists. Cole spoke into the receiver, voice hard as stone. "This is Captain Darius Cole, holding position at North Tower. All units, civilians, anyone who can hear me, listen well. We don't surrender. We don't kneel. They want our planet? They'll have to bleed for every inch of it." His words rippled outward, carried on stolen frequencies. In the alleys and ruins, men gritted their teeth, shouldered weapons, and prepared to fight an enemy that considered them insects. The night became an inferno. Alien shock troopers deployed, towering figures in segmented armor that shimmered with alien alloys. They advanced with machine precision, weapons spitting blue arcs that disintegrated barricades. To their surprise, gunfire answered, not organized volleys, but ragged bursts from rooftops, alleys, shattered windows. Humans firing not for victory, but for defiance. Krothos received the first casualty reports with irritation. Trivial losses, he thought. Yet the pattern repeated across the city. Ambushes in sewers, Molotovs raining from apartment balconies, small arms fire harassing even the most disciplined formations. It was not war, as he understood it. It was chaos weaponized. Cole and Hale crouched behind shattered concrete, smoke stinging their lungs. Hale's hands shook as he jammed another frequency, disrupting alien squad chatter. They're trying to coordinate, but I'm cutting holes in their net. It's working. Cole shot a trooper through the visor and pulled Hale lower as return fire scorched the air. It's not enough. They'll adapt. But in Hale's eyes burned that reckless gleam again. Then we adapt faster. The battle stretched deep into the night, a contest not of technology, but of will. Every loss hardened the men who survived. Every strike taught them how their enemy thought, how they moved, how they bled. For the first time in his career, Admiral Krothos felt a flicker of doubt as he studied the resistance reports. The humans should have broken. Instead, they were learning. By dawn, the city smoldered. Entire districts lay in ruins. The Dominion marked their progress in measured grids of devastation, yet the human resistance still snarled in their teeth. Cole stood at the tower's edge, ash in his hair, rifle heavy in his hands. Hale slumped beside him, eyes bloodshot, still tinkering with captured alien tech. Cole looked out at the ruined horizon and muttered, "They've made a mistake." "What mistake?" Hale rasped. "They came here thinking we'd bow." Cole chambered around, the sound sharp in the morning quiet. Now they're about to find out what kind of hell they walked into. And somewhere above, aboard his pristine flagship, Krothos stared at casualty tallies that refused to stay small, his knuckles whitening against the armrest of his throne. What had seemed a simple conquest had shifted into something messier, something uglier, something dangerous. For the first time, the Admiral wondered if the Dominion had underestimated its prey. Under a bruised sky, the ruins of cities smoldered, while smoke curled upward like black ribbons against the clouds. The Threx Dominion had expected a swift occupation, a display of dominance that would cow humanity into submission. Instead, they discovered a species that refused to bow. The invasion, meant to be an effortless march, was unraveling into a war of attrition. Alien technology may have been superior, but it stumbled when confronted by a creature that had evolved to thrive in chaos. Colonel Ethan Ward crouched in the rubble of a collapsed overpass, his rifle angled across his knees. His face was lean and scarred, each line carved by decades of conflict. Once a man who believed his service had ended with retirement, he now found himself thrust back into command, leading men who looked to him not for speeches, but for results. His soldiers were farmers, students, fathers, ordinary men pressed into extraordinary circumstances. Ward knew their resolve would matter more than firepower. Beside him, Lieutenant Mason Hale adjusted a makeshift transmitter, sweat dripping down his brow. Young and sharp, Hale carried an almost reckless enthusiasm for the fight. He had studied alien communication grids and found ways to fracture them with jury-rigged human systems. His eyes gleamed with determination, though Ward noticed the tremor in his hands when silence settled too long. Fear, Ward mused, was not weakness. It was proof that the boy understood what was at stake. Across the ruined streets, alien patrols moved with cold precision. Commander Yarok Thul led them, his towering figure framed by armor that hummed with restrained power. His patience was thinning. Human resistance had proven maddeningly unpredictable. They refused to engage in open battle, preferring ambushes, traps, and the kind of brutal improvisation that defied every model the Dominion War Council had prepared. To Thul, humanity was chaos incarnate, and chaos was something his soldiers were not trained to endure. The night's operation was simple on paper: strike at the alien supply convoy snaking through the eastern sector, severing the Dominion's hold on the district. In reality, it was anything but simple. Ward's men had only scavenged explosives and repurposed fuel canisters. Still, every alien vehicle destroyed would be another reminder that Earth would not break. Ward leaned toward Hale. "You've tested the signal?" Hale nodded, his voice low but steady. "We'll trigger the charges once they hit the kill zone. Just need the convoy to stay on course." Ward allowed himself a small grunt of approval. "Good. No second chances tonight." The convoy rumbled into view, massive carriers crawling through the wreckage like armored beasts. Alien troops marched alongside them, their weapons glowing faintly in the gloom. Hale exhaled sharply, pressing a button on his transmitter. A moment's pause stretched into eternity before the street erupted in fire. The blast flung alien soldiers through the air, their disciplined formation scattering like leaves in a storm. Ward's men opened fire, their gunfire ragged but merciless. The aliens retaliated with blinding energy bolts, carving molten furrows into concrete, but humans pressed closer, crawling from shadows, hurling Molotov cocktails and improvised mines. Chaos consumed the street. From the far end, Commander Thull roared commands, rallying his troops. His voice cut through the din like a blade, but his soldiers faltered under the unpredictability of human assault. One of his lieutenants fell to a hidden blade, another to a collapsing building rigged with explosives. This was not war as Thull understood it. This was predation, and humans were proving themselves apex predators of their ruined world. Ward fired until his rifle clicked empty, then swung it like a club, knocking an alien soldier off balance before driving a combat knife through the seam of its armor. Blood hissed against steel, alien physiology ill-prepared for close-quarters brutality. Nearby, Hale narrowly avoided a plasma shot, his face streaked with dust and blood as he scrambled to reset another detonator. He had not fired a shot, yet his sabotage was every bit as lethal. The firefight dragged on until flames consumed the convoy, smoke blotting the stars overhead. Aliens withdrew in disarray, dragging their wounded as Ward's men melted back into the darkness. Victory was not absolute. They had lost 3 men in the fight, but it was a statement. Ward stood amid the wreckage, chest heaving, his gaze fixed on the retreating enemy. For every soldier buried tonight, 10 more would rise tomorrow, angrier and more determined. He whispered to himself, a grim reminder for the aliens who believed Earth was theirs to conquer. "We never fight alone." Far away, within the Dominion command ship, Admiral Krathos received Thull's report. His mandibles clicked in irritation as he listened. Entire convoys destroyed, patrols ambushed, morale crumbling. This was supposed to have been a lesson in dominance, but instead, it had become a lesson in humility. He stared at the holographic map of Earth, dotted with resistance flare-ups across every continent. He began to understand that humans were not merely defending their world. They were shaping a war that would stain the Dominion's history forever. That night, as Ward's men buried their fallen under shattered concrete and whispered promises of vengeance, a grim certainty solidified on both sides. The aliens had not come to pacify a helpless species. They had stumbled into a crucible where survival itself had forged mankind into something relentless. And so the reasons multiplied. Guerrilla warfare was etched into humanity's marrow. Every scrap of Earth became a weapon. Fear hardened into defiance. Defeat was not an end, but a beginning. For every alien soldier lost, another reason took shape in the shadows, reasons that whispered the same bitter truth. The Dominion should have stayed home. Ash still clung to the air weeks after the first alien convoys had been shattered. The cities were half-dead things now, silent, but for the echo of boots on broken stone and the thunder of engines above. Humanity should have been broken, yet every defeat only hardened its will. The Dominion had answered resistance with escalation, and now the war stretched across continents, a crucible of fire no fleet admiral had foreseen. General Marcus Kane stood at the heart of a hidden command post carved beneath the bones of a ruined stadium. A towering man with close-cropped hair and an expression carved from iron, he embodied something far older than technology, unyielding resolve. Where Colonel Ward had fought in shadows, Kane organized fury into strategy. Maps of enemy troop movements littered the table before him, each marked with careful precision. He did not see hopelessness in the red stains of occupied zones. He saw opportunity, cracks waiting to be split wide open. "Fuel reserves are dwindling," reported Lieutenant Hale, his voice rough from exhaustion yet unshaken. He had grown in these weeks, shedding youthful nerves for a hardened steadiness. His transmitter now rested at his hip like a second weapon. The boy who once trembled now transformed into a man who sabotaged entire grids with a flick of his wrist. Kane's eyes narrowed on the maps. "Then we bleed their supply lines faster than they can bleed ours. Hunger is a weapon, Hale. Let's see if the Dominion can stomach it." Overhead, the sky screamed as fire rained from orbit. The Dominion's patience had broken. They no longer sought occupation but obliteration. Admiral Krathos had deployed his dreadnoughts to scour the earth clean, hoping to drown resistance beneath oceans of flame. Yet the bombardments achieved little. Cities burned, yes, but survivors always clawed from the ruins. Humanity's hatred refused to be bombed away. On the ground, Commander Yarrick Thull directed the alien counteroffensive with grim efficiency. He respected human endurance in a way his superiors did not, but even he failed to comprehend its depth. Each time his patrols claimed ground, they discovered it mined with explosives crafted from household chemicals. Each time he believed a district pacified, resistance emerged again, fiercer than before. Thull felt himself at war with the very soil, as though Earth itself conspired against the Dominion. Disease struck next. Alien soldiers collapsed, their bodies racked by infections born of an unforgiving biosphere. Mosquitoes carried fevers their immune systems could not repel. Simple cuts festered into deadly wounds. Their medical units worked tirelessly, but no serum could conquer an entire planet's microbial arsenal. Earth was a death world, and its smallest inhabitants became assassins. In the underground command post, Kane watched as reports filtered in, alien casualties rising not from bullets or bombs, but from insects and rainwater. He allowed himself the smallest smirk. "Even our dirt hates them," he muttered, earning a grim chuckle from Ward, who had joined the council that evening. Ward leaned against the table, his face lined but alive with fire. "They thought technology would shield them. Turns out, you can't armor yourself against 1 billion years of evolution." Kane studied him, then returned his gaze to the map. "Good. Let them rot. But we won't wait for Earth to finish them. We strike before they adapt." The plan was audacious, the kind only desperation could birth. Seize a Dominion frigate intact, study it, and turn its weapons back on the invaders. Hale worked day and night, charting weak points in their digital defenses. Ward drilled his men in the brutal simplicity of close-quarters boarding. Kane, unflinching, prepared to gamble everything. When the night came, clouds cloaked the sky as a frigate descended to patrol. The resistance moved like shadows, crossing rivers of ash and glass. Explosives crippled its landing gear, forcing it to the ground. Gunfire erupted as human fighters swarmed the perimeter, every shot carrying the rage of the fallen. Ward led the charge inside, knife flashing through alien throats when ammunition failed. Hale sprinted behind, transmitter slung to his chest, jamming comms with improvised signals. Every hallway was carnage, burned walls, screaming soldiers, the clash of steel against chitin. At the heart of the ship, Kane emerged like a storm. His rifle spat fire until the last magazine was gone, then his fists finished what bullets could not. When at last the bridge fell silent, the humans stood bloodied but triumphant, their breath ragged in the choking smoke. The frigate was theirs. Ward pressed a hand to the console, marveling. "We've captured the unthinkable." Hale's eyes were alight with fever determination as he began decoding the systems. "We'll fly this thing. We'll learn it. We'll turn their weapons back on them." Kane said nothing, only stared out through the cracked viewport at the night beyond. For the first time, the Dominion was not merely bleeding Earth. Earth had cut deep into the Dominion. Far above, Admiral Krathos received word of the loss. Rage thundered through him, mandibles gnashing, yet beneath his fury lurked unease. This war was supposed to be a demonstration of superiority, a warning to other worlds. Instead, it had become a quagmire where his fleets vanished into shadows and silence. He began to understand the truth that haunted every alien soldier now. This was not conquest, it was survival. As dawn crept over the horizon, humanity celebrated not with cheers but with renewed determination. The frigate's capture was not an end, but a beginning. Every man who stood within its scorched hulls understood what it meant. The war had changed. They had taken a piece of the enemy's future and claimed it for their own. And with it, they carved yet another reason into history, reason enough that the Dominion should never have come at all. The captured frigate groaned like a wounded beast as it cut through the night sky, its stolen engines leaving trails of blue fire over a land still shrouded in smoke. Within its metallic ribs, men who had once fought with rifles and blades now wrestled with alien systems, learning each console with desperate precision. The ship was more than steel and circuitry. It was proof that humanity could seize the tools of its oppressors and bend them to their will. General Marcus Kane stood on the bridge, arms folded, his silhouette cast against the flickering displays. His expression remained a mask of iron, yet beneath it burned something harsher than pride, an understanding that this vessel was not just a weapon but a promise. For every man buried in the rubble of fallen cities, for every family that had screamed beneath orbital fire, this ship carried vengeance. Kane was not a man who fought for survival alone. He fought for retribution. Beside him, Colonel Ethan Ward paced with restless energy, his rifle still slung across his back despite the alien steel surrounding them. Ward was a soldier forged by ambushes and blood, but here he felt the strange weight of command broaden. The resistance had become more than guerrillas now. They were evolving into an army. He knew Kane saw it too, the shift from prey to predator. Still, Ward felt the heaviness of each loss pressing at his ribs. For every victory they carved, another name was added to the dead. The responsibility ate at him, though he would never allow it to show. Lieutenant Mason Hale hunched over a console, his hands dancing across alien glyphs with startling speed. Weeks ago, fear had trembled in those fingers. Now, they moved with conviction, each keystroke tearing deeper into the Dominion's technological heart. Sweat ran down his temple, but his eyes glowed with resolve. "I can crack their comms net," he said, voice steady despite the static buzzing in the air. "If I link us through their own channels, we'll broadcast our counterstrike across every occupied sector. They'll know we're not hiding anymore." Ward gave him a curt nod, though Kane only leaned closer, studying the young officer as if weighing his soul. "Do it," Kane ordered. "Let every man under their boot hear us. And let every alien know we're coming." Far above Earth's battered sky, the Dominion fleet waited like a crown of blades. Admiral Krathos sat in his command throne, mandibles clicking in unease as he studied the void. Reports had become a litany of failure. Convoys annihilated, patrols ambushed, soldiers felled not by bullets, but by the very air they breathed. Now word had reached him that an entire frigate had fallen into human hands. He had underestimated them. The realization gnawed at him like acid. If the humans had learned to fly Dominion ships, then the war had shifted beyond his control. The humans struck before dawn. The stolen frigate rose through cloud and fire, hurtling into the void where the Dominion fleet anchored. Ward stood at Kane's side, both men steady despite the violent trembling of the hull. Hale's voice filled the comms, echoing not just within the ship but across captured channels. "This is Earth. We do not surrender. We will never surrender. We are coming for you." The words rippled like thunder across occupied cities, igniting resistance cells worldwide. Men who had crouched in shadows now stood taller, fueled by the knowledge that the enemy was not invincible. In orbit, Krathos's fleets bristled to intercept, their weapons primed to obliterate the audacity of one stolen vessel. The first clash was chaos. Alien cannons roared. lancing beams of plasma across the void, but Hale had already jammed their targeting arrays, turning precision fire into blind strikes. Ward commanded boarding teams with brutal efficiency, launching grappling pods into enemy hulls. Humans swarmed into steel corridors where aliens once held dominance, knives and bullets tearing through soldiers who had never known the taste of close-quarters terror. Kane himself strode the decks like a juggernaut, rifle thunder shaking the air until its barrel glowed red. He was everywhere at once, dragging wounded men to cover, striking down foes with a ferocity that defied age. To his soldiers, he was more than a commander. He was a war made flesh, the embodiment of their refusal to bow. On the flagship, Krothos watched in disbelief as one vessel became many. Every captured Dominion ship turned its guns against its brothers, swelling humanity's fleet strike by strike. His carefully orchestrated occupation had become a battlefield of betrayal. He roared orders, his mandibles clicking in desperation, but his fleet fractured under the relentless, chaotic storm that only humans could summon. Ward breached the flagship with his men, carving through resistance until the command deck lay before him. The chamber reeked of ozone and blood, alien officers scrambling to seal doors. But it was too late. Ward entered like a shadow with fire at his back, blade in hand. Krothos rose from his throne, towering, armored, every line of his frame a declaration of superiority. Yet as he met Ward's eyes, he saw no fear. Only that unyielding human defiance the Kainas War Council had dismissed as primitive. They clashed with steel and fury, Krothos's blows heavy enough to shatter bone, Ward's movements sharp, ruthless, honed by desperation. At last Ward drove his knife through the alien's chest, twisting until the Admiral staggered and collapsed. Silence followed, broken only by Kane's voice echoing through the captured comms. "This is humanity's world. You came here thinking us weak. You leave knowing us strong. Carry that shame back across the stars. And remember, if you ever return, we will not just resist. We will destroy you." Across the Dominion fleet, the order to retreat spread like wildfire. Ships turned, limping back into the void, abandoning a world they had thought to claim with ease. Humanity stood bloodied, its cities in ruins, its people scarred, but undefeated. As the last alien vessel vanished into the dark, Kane placed a heavy hand on Ward's shoulder. "This isn't the end," he said, voice low but certain. "It's the beginning. They'll remember Earth. They'll remember us." Ward nodded, though his gaze lingered on the stars. Hale leaned against the console, exhaustion etched into his young face, yet a small smile touched his lips. For the first time since the invasion began, hope felt heavier than fear. And so the war ended not with humanity's submission, but with its ascension. The galaxy had gained 42 reasons to fear them, carved into fire, blood, and memory. Reasons enough that the Dominion, and all who watched from the shadows of the stars, would whisper the same warning for generations to come. They should have stayed home. Would you like me to also create a condensed epilogue paragraph, outside the 4 sections, that ties together the 42 reasons theme like a grim, legendary tale passed among alien species? You said.